Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Thank you so much for joining us for another episode.
It's 13?
This is actually 14.
14, wow.
Episode 14. I can't believe we've been doing this for actually more than 14 weeks now. And this has just been an amazing project. So tonight we're going to be talking, we kind of gave you guys a little bit of a cliffhanger there, but we are going to be talking about an event that happened almost 1 week ago. That was a little bit life-altering. Not too bad, but definitely changed the way that we looked at things. And we thought that maybe we could share some lessons that we had learned from that experience and perhaps bless you all with those in some way. So first we thought we'd talk a little bit about what exactly happened and kind of go from there.
Yeah, so most of you know probably that we have a dog that we rescued a few years ago. When he came to us, he was 6 years old, and he's a little over 10 now, or almost 11 really, closer to 11 now. Yeah. He's a Shiba Inu. He's the cutest dog you'll ever see. And so me and Megan kind of split walking him. She usually walks him in the morning, and I walk him at night. And so last Monday night, or was it Tuesday night?
It was Monday
night. We were going on our nightly walk. We kind of have a pattern. I take him on several different paths just to keep it fresh and alter it up a little bit. But we were on one of our normal kind of routes, and we were coming back towards the house. And I was crossing the street that gets kind of closer to our road, and a car had just pulled out of a driveway that was on a street close to where we live. And I saw, kind of in the background of that car pulling out, a silhouette of what looked like a man and a dog next to him. And a lot of times when you're walking at night, you'll see, or even in the day, you'll see, especially dogs that aren't well behaved, you'll see their owners kind of have them sit next to them while you kind of pass or whatever, so the dog will stop barking. And I did hear a few barks, but what it looked to me in my mind was saying, okay, that dog, he's just controlling his dog, and I can keep going. That's kind of, it's interesting, and maybe we'll talk about this some later, but how your mind works and how you have these patterns that you see. Yeah. And in my mind, there was a man with a dog that was sitting, waiting, trying to calm his dog down. So I kind of kept walking, and again, this is happening like split seconds. And then all of a sudden I see, and I'm about a yard away from where this dog is and the man, I see the dog running towards us. And before I can do anything, and this is another, I tried to reach down and pick up Zan, and before I could grab him, and I can't even recall, I may have even started to pick him up, but of course he was struggling to try to face the dog. This dog had grabbed him and would not let go.
Which area of
so the dog, it was kind of hard to tell at first, but it was his backside, and I couldn't tell exactly where. I couldn't tell if it was his legs, his butt, his tail, but he had a hold of Zan, and of course Zan is freaking out, growling, barking. I started just like hitting this dog like instinctually as hard as I could around the face and shoulders. And by this time, the owner has run over and is trying to get the dog off, yelling at its name. It's not doing anything. So eventually he starts grabbing at it, trying to pull him off. I'm still hitting the dog. I don't know exactly why the dog finally let go, but it seemed like I would say about 30 seconds or so, maybe less. It seemed like an eternity and very instant at the same time. Finally, the dog lets go. And so then I pick Zan up. At this point, like we've moved from the sidewalk. We're actually in the street, in the middle of the road, which thankfully is kind of not very busy at that time of night. And the owner has finally gotten the dog in his arms and is sitting on the ground with it. I turn to the guy and say, hey, do you live here? Because I wanted to make sure that it wasn't somewhere down the street and he was just walking by that house, so I knew I could come back to them when this was over and get things fixed or figure out what to do. He said, yeah, I do live here. Reluctantly, in a way, it seemed like he was just exasperated at that point and just kind of beside himself, I think, as well. But so then I picked Zan up as fast as I can. I had my phone with me. I called Megan, said, and as calmly as possible, Zan was just attacked by a dog. I'm on my way back. We got to get to the vet. And so at that point, it was probably About 5-minute walk back to the house. I was trying again to get him back as soon as I could. I picked him up and it was hard. Again, it was dark, it was pitch black. I couldn't tell. There wasn't any visible, like a lot of blood, but I couldn't really tell again where he was bitten and the extent of it. So I just grabbed him as much as I could and went on. So when we got back to the house, Megan, you can kind of pick up what happened from when I gave you a call.
So unfortunately, we've had to go to the emergency vet more than once down here. This was our third time, so we were familiar with them. So I called them right away after I hung up with Matt and said, hey, you know, this is what happened. I don't know the extent of everything. They said, well, yeah, you need to bring him in because of the fur. They can't see where I couldn't just examine him and look and see where the damages were. And so they said, you got to bring him here. We got to shave him. We got to deal with some different things. So, but the good thing is, you know, you can call ahead and then they can be waiting, you know, ready for you. So we get there shortly thereafter. It was about a 10:45-ish, 10:40 by the time we got there. So it was only about 15 or so minutes after the accident, or the attack, I should say, not accident. You know, we can only do curbside because of Corona. And so, you know, it's that waiting game of we don't really know what things are going to look like. And so, thankfully, the vet and everybody that was working there did a terrific job. They were trying to communicate with us as quickly as they could. By the time they examined him and saw the extent of the damages, you know, we were relieved to know that it was only in the tail area. It was only on his tail that she had gotten a hold of him and had pierced him, and then he had an abrasion down the back. But that was probably a solid hour or hour and a half into the process that we found that out. They were actually preparing us to, you know, he was gonna have to go under. They didn't know what that was gonna look like. And then also that there could be damages if she had gotten a hold of his behind somewhere, because there's a lot of nerve endings there. And so there could be complications down the road from that. So then we get home about 1:30, I think, 1:30. And it was, of course, a very long night. There was a lot there. We might unpack a little bit more in this. And then, you know, we feel like we've got the meds, we've settled down a little bit. And then Matt comes to me and says, oh, wait, I was also bitten.
And it was very slight. I mean, there was just one area of broken skin and some scratches, but it was just funny, like, after, because like Megan said, it was a while after we got home, like, I just started feeling like my wrist, I'm sore on a couple of my knuckles. My wrist and my hand and my forearm were like sore from hitting this dog, and it didn't hit until we finally got home. And this is, you know, maybe 2 or 3 hours by that point after the incident. And just that adrenaline that people talk about in those pressure situations, those traumatic situations, that it is like a pain. I mean, it is a pain suppressant. And it wasn't until a couple hours later that, you know, I realized, I looked down and I had some scratches in one area of broken skin on my hand. And then, like I said, my knuckles were sore and my forearm was sore from hitting, you know, bone, a brick wall over and over. Yeah. But I think, was there anything else you wanted to add to the background?
We got his situation taken care of. We went to the hospital. We showed them immunization records. He got antibiotics and the tetanus. We did all the right things to try to take care of him as well. But Zan was definitely in the worst shape.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's a pretty good synopsis of the main things of what happened.
Yeah. So what we wanted to do then is kind of take that situation, and like we talked about, this is a little bit different of an episode, and see like what we took away from that, what we learned, and how it kind of applied to situations like that, and maybe in some cases applies broadly to your life. Mm-hmm. And so hopefully, you know, you can have something to take away from this when you go through something like that, because you know, this is a dog that we love, but there's a lot more serious situations with children, with other family members. There's a lot of different traumatic situations you can go through, so hopefully some of these you can kind of take away. And the first kind of takeaway for me was situational awareness, like I talked about at the beginning. Mm-hmm. There's a book really good on this called Left of Bang that talks, it's more of like a protection and looking out for yourself. It talks a lot about situational awareness and how you view the world that you're in, and different levels of awareness. And one of those is just kind of looking at anomalies when you're out. Like one thing that I try to do when I walk around, because one of the areas that we live close to is a park, and immediately when I go there, I try to see, okay, is there anybody different that's not usually here? Are there any cars parked that aren't usually here? And like being aware of just what's going on that might be outside the norm of what you normally see. And so for me, that was this person was, I don't usually see them there. And, you know, I don't know if I had been, you know, looking down at my phone or more involved in listening to music or something, potentially it could have been worse. I don't know. But definitely being aware of where you are in the environment. Are there any anomalies? Is there anything that is out of the norm of where you are? I think is really important. And kind of part of that was, along the same vein, was being able to use situations that you were in the past. Because one of those that, again, you hear about these situations where time kind of stands still and it's happening so quickly, but at the same time you can recall something years ago or a long time ago in that moment. And my mind flashed back to a time when these little dogs that I wasn't really afraid of, I was more afraid of Zan attacking them, where I would just pick Zan up until the owner could come get their dog. And so that's what I tried to do immediately was, okay, I knew, okay, I'm going to pick Zan up, just get him away from this dog. So that was kind of interesting. And then really kind of as well, like, what are you willing to do if you're put in a situation that is potentially dangerous for yourself or a pet? And obviously that's like, if you're a parent, then I'm sure there's no links to what you're willing to go to make sure that you protect that person. But I think, you know, in that moment, like just thinking, and I you know, the past week or so, I've kind of reviewed that situation a lot. And in some cases, I feel guilty that I wasn't quick enough to pick Zan up, or I couldn't have done anything better. But I do think I am proud of the fact that come to find out, and what I kind of figured out when the dog was running at me, it seemed to be a very aggressive breed, and it was an aggressive dog. Like, he easily could have attacked me as well. But I do, like, that was just a very split second, like, what if this dog attacks me? But otherwise it was, like I said, and I'm not trying to act like I did some heroic thing, but it was very automatic that I'm going to do what I can to try to get this dog off Zan. And so I think thinking it through those scenarios of what am I going to be willing to do, how far am I willing to go if I'm in this kind of dangerous, negative situation where I might be putting myself at risk, is important as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a hard thing to think about, you know, like, it's sort of like your will. It's like you don't want to have to think about what lengths you're going to go, but it is probably a good exercise for your mind to be able to think through that. So like I said earlier, you know, one takeaway for me was that, you know, a situation like this is going to change your perspective. If not, it wasn't maybe huge, but it definitely was it kind of shifted some things. I know, at least for me. And at first, you know, it's just, okay, it's going to color my experiences moving forward. And, you know, you're praying for the best outcome. You're praying that everything is going to come together and it's not going to be as bad as it seems and all those things. But you don't really know. You're just trying to trust that whatever's coming your way, it's going to be something that you can, you know, face. And, you know, we're blessed that we have each other to be able to rely on through something like that. But I think it's also good to recognize that even though it may change your circumstance or it may change the way that you look at something, you know, moving forward, that it's okay to also grieve whatever the consequences are, whatever is moving forward. I was very concerned about him with the nerve endings, with Zan, with his nerve endings. I was very, you know, immediately, you know, it was kind of easy for my mind to go to a darker place with that. And, you know, what was that going to mean down the road for him? And he's been in fairly good health up until this point. And so, you know, it's easy to kind of jump to that worst case scenario, but just trying to look at the facts and being okay with, all right, I may need some time to just process and grieve whatever my expectation or whatever it was that I saw. I foresaw moving forward, and you know, may take some time to have, like, you know, have your peace about that.
Yeah.
So that was just another thing one thing that I took away from it. What was your next thing?
My second one was not learning or trying to not panic in certain situations that are either traumatic or negative. And I think, again, looking back then after revisiting this, like Megan mentioned, there's been other times where we've had to rush Zane to the emergency room, and the one that was the most dramatic was when Zane had got a hold of the frog, and there's poisonous frogs down here, and we were concerned that he might have ingested one, and it turned out it wasn't a poisonous frog, and he was okay. But he was throwing up, and it looked like it was very severe. And in that moment, I panicked when that happened, and I was very out of sorts. I wasn't in a place that I could handle the situation very well. I wasn't mentally in a place where I could lead and make sure things got taken care of. And because I was so concerned and worried, I let my emotions get the best of me. Mm-hmm. And so this is like, if you think about situations, there's situations that happen that are preparing you for now. And so this time, at least I felt that I did a lot better in not panicking, because again, when this happened, when he finally let go of Zane and I was heading back to the house, my mind went back to that previous situation, and I was like, all right, I can't, regardless of what's happening, I don't know how bad this is, but I can't let my emotions get the best of me like they did that time. I have to be able to communicate effectively to Megan, communicate with Zan, communicate with the vets, whatever, to make sure that whatever needs to happen can happen. And so I think we've all been in situations probably where something like that has happened, a very dramatic situation, maybe we haven't handled it the best. So when it happens again, think back to that and make a different choice. And we were able to do that. I was able to do that a lot better this time than the previous time. So I think in a way I think we say this and we may know it, that certain situations in our past are preparing us for now, but that really came to my mind in this instance that, I've had these things where I didn't act exactly like I wanted, and it turned out fine, it turned out okay, we were able to handle it. So don't let the emotions get the best of you this time, make a different choice.
Yeah. Don't let that totally cloud everything that you're needing to do in that moment to take care of the other party or the other person, other animal. I think that's so true. And, I think this kind of segues well into my next takeaway, which was, processing, because you want to have, even though it's in the moment, you don't really want to think about all the things, but, moving forward from that, you would like to have some takeaways and some things that you want to learn from it. But in the moment, you're still trying to process what is happening. And in this particular situation, so I kind of went into help mode, and we were on the way there. I was trying to be, very calm as much as I could, kind of keep it in. And through the whole process, I was just trying to just stay very calm, very calm. And it wasn't until the last hour or so that we were there that it started to kind of hit me, and I really felt like, we were talking to family, we were trying to communicate with them what was going on, and but it was starting to, like, the emotions were starting to get to me. But it really wasn't until we got home that I was really starting to process, and it really started to hit me. And just seeing his tail and the condition that it was in was very difficult. And I'm not trying to compare this to another situation. It could have been way worse and all of that, but just looking at our particular situation, it was very difficult. And so when you're processing, I think it's important to know, especially if you're with other people, that they're going to process it differently, or their way of processing it might be different than yours. And what was good in that moment is, we were able to kind of check in with each other and say, hey, how are you doing? Or, is everything's going to be okay, and kind of be that comfort and that support in that moment. And it doesn't have to be a spouse in that situation. Obviously it can be anybody, but having that, with each other and checking in, and I think it's important that if you're the person that's trying to comfort, letting them know, like, give them a hug if that's appropriate, or letting them know, like, it's okay to cry, and I'm here, and this is hard. Like, even just saying, like, this is hard, this is a difficult situation, and just kind of laying it out there, like, you know, you don't have to sit there and act like it's rainbows and puppies, you know. It's difficult when you're going through something like that.
And it can come back up later. I mean, I honestly still think about it every day, but I think, you know, things can pop up at different times, or something can trigger it. I mean, we walk by that area almost every day when we're walking Zan most of the time, where we have that option. It's very close to our house. And so anytime you drive by or see that house, you kind of think about it.
Right.
And so you also have to be try to be understanding if somebody's processing the timeline is different than yours, and how they're processing it can be different than what you are, and they may not get over it. And we have a tendency to want people to get over things if we get over them, but they just may not be over it yet. So we have to be patient and understanding.
Yeah, absolutely.
So my next one is about gratitude. We've talked about this some on different episodes, but I think something that I've really been trying specifically with Zan, and I think, you know, we can apply this bigger picture too, but the last probably 6 months to a year is, you know, walking him every day. You know, in Florida, it can be very, very hot. Like today was around 100, and, you know, I went on a 15-minute walk with him, and I was like sweating when I came back. And that can be kind of frustrating, because you're like, I have other things to do. I don't want to be out here in the heat. And then it rains a ton. And so there's a lot of times when you're out walking him and it's raining and it's pouring. And what I've really been trying to think about the last 6 months is, you know, like we said, we rescued Zan, he's 10 years old now. Like, there's going to be a few years later that I'm going to be like, wow, I wish I could walk Zan, and I'm not going to have that opportunity. And so I've really trying to be cognizant of, even in those moments, like when I'm out on a walk with him, like either saying thanks to God for that situation, or just repeating to myself and remembering like how grateful I am for this opportunity to be able to walk him.
This is a lot to process, you guys.
So just trying to enjoy every moment. And then this applies to other people, like those regrets that you have for not taking opportunities to spend time with people. Like, there's going to be a day when you're not going to be able to have those conversations.
Yeah. There are going to be moments that you're going to regret, and this really reminds me of our preacher Don. He did this sermon when we lost two people that had, one woman was were they the same age? I can't remember, but they were like both really pretty young, like in their 40s or something. And we lost two different people. That one guy had been attending where we were and then had gone to another congregation. And then another woman, she had been going there for a long time. And, you know, his whole point with the sermon was, you know, we don't know how much time we have left. And if you had one day left, what would you do with that one day? Or if you had 1 week left, what would you do with that 1 week? And then he kind of extrapolated it. And it did really kind of wake me up to some more things, especially along the lines of what Matt was talking about, is we need to be telling people we love them. We need to be spending time with people. We need to be reaching out. When we think of somebody, we need to pray for them, or we need to call them, or we need to text them, or we need to, you know, be that person, because we don't want to live with those regrets. And I think it's easy to, especially in our fast-paced world, to be like, oh, I'll get to that. But if 2020 has taught us anything, it's that we need to be taking advantage of those moments.
Yeah, and what I was trying to say is just be grateful for those moments that aren't always the fun, big, sexy things that we do. Right. It's just taking a walk with your dog, enjoying seeing how they enjoy nature or are curious about things. You can learn something from simple things like that is limited. And so just being grateful, expanding that to other areas. You don't have to have a dog to do that. Just thinking about it in the context of people you spend time with, your kids, your family, your friends. There's just the small things throughout the day that we take for granted and can sometimes, like I said, with the walk, be inconvenient for us, but there is still joy to be found there.
Absolutely.
There is still memories to be made there.
Yeah, I think that's so true. I think, even for me, this looks like, even on my, how much I love to run, and it's just taking the time to just really look at what's in the world right now. what does that leaf look like? How is the sun hitting that? Or maybe it's an animal and how they're acting, or maybe it's just people playing out in the park or whatever. But, you know, really looking at what's around us, not just getting lost in our own thoughts all of the time, but really enjoying and looking at what's there, and thus increasing our awareness and our consciousness of our now. And that's the only thing we're promised is now. That's it. You know, that's all we have. So my last one is, you know, through this process, and I think through any kind of process, it's important to have people in your corner. It's important to have people that you can rely on. And if you don't have a support system, I want you to try to really work on finding one. And if we can be a part of that, we would love to be that for you. But have people in your life that you can call on, that can help you. And so there were people that were praying for us, but there were also people who stepped in and helped us in a specific way. And I think this starts honestly with, you know, identifying what are some things that I could use help with right now. And you may not always see it super clearly because you may be in a daze yourself, but if there is something you can identify and have somebody help you with, it's amazing how much it can really take off your plate. You know, this week, there were at least 2 or 3 nights where I didn't get very much sleep at all because we were concerned that Zan would take the cone off and start licking his tail, and if he did that, he could infect the area where he was bit. They had to keep it open. They have to do an open air thing for it to heal, and that was fine. I mean, it, you know, obviously, you know, could have been worse, but in those situations and in those moments when you're feeling exhausted and whatever, it's okay to reach out and ask people for help. And if you can think of something specific, allowing those people in your life, especially you two like me, who are helpers, who want to come and help serve you. And we had a couple people who came and stayed with Zan when we were both gone or whatever, and it was a huge help, and we're so grateful to them. And we had, like I said, people praying and checking in, and we were so grateful for them. We didn't exactly put it out there a lot at first, just because we were trying to process ourselves, and also there was a lot to kind of deal with logistically at first, and we were just kind of surviving for a bit there. So, but know that in those moments, you know, it's okay to ask for help, and it's actually a sign of strength when you can say, I know I can't do this alone, and we're not meant to do this life alone. So I think it's really important that you have those people in your corner.
Yeah. So my last point, and bear with me with this one, stick with my thought process, because I think this is going to apply more outside of this exact situation. But one thing that I took away from this at the end, and I think it's called anthropomorphize or something like that, when we try to put animal or human characteristics onto animals and think that they process things the same and they have the same emotions and they can be courageous and fearful and loving. And, you know, there's different degrees of that and probably different thoughts there. So I'm not trying to do this, but just understand the point I took away from this, and I got out of the situation. But at the end of once we finally got the dog off Zan, he immediately turned around and was ready to go back in the fight. And to me, and again, this was a fight that he couldn't have won. He's 25 pounds, you know, he's an athletic little dog, but Shibas aren't bred to fight. And the dog that attacked him was double his size at least, and again was an aggressive breed, and you know, would have dealt him, would have ragdolled him if they had gone, if she'd wanted to, which she did want to. But what I took away from that was, you know, there's some fights that we face that we aren't gonna necessarily know if we're gonna win or not. Whether that is an actual physical fight where we have to try to defend ourselves or defend a loved one. That could be something that you were trying to stand up for yourself or your family in a spiritual setting, or a setting where you need to have a difficult discussion. There's fights that we're going to face that it's not going to be a guarantee that we're going to win.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
there could be detrimental effects to us health-wise, mentally, spiritually, financially? And are we willing to face those? Are we willing to go back in and not know whether or not we're going to be successful? And for me, that was kind of a gut check, that I was like, that's pretty impressive that this dog was going to go back regardless, whether that was just to defend himself, whether that was, to help defend me, whether that was just his instincts of being a dog. But my takeaway was, I need to really, make sure I'm set in my mind of those lines in the sand that we put, that regardless of what it looks like, regardless of the outcome, regardless of the difficulties I might face or the repercussions, there's some lines that regardless of what is across it, I'm going to step across still, and I'm going to fight that fight. And so that was a big takeaway for me that I still probably have a lot of thinking to do on, but from a bigger picture standpoint, really kind of stuck in my mind. And I think that picture of him going right back in is always going to stick with me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's so many things that are happening right now that we want to, and I mean, in general, could be in the future, that we want to stand up and fight and be willing to go back in, even if we know we're not going to win, but we're doing the right thing.
Right.
For the right reasons and the right way. So that's pretty much all we had for you guys tonight. The last couple of things we wanted to say is thank you to those of you who are following us on YouTube. If you don't already, we would love for you to subscribe and leave a review over there. If you hear some shaking, that's Zan. He absolutely hates the collar, and we're still having to keep it on periodically. And our username for that is No More Some Days with a Z. I'm sorry, that's our email. No More Some Days with a Z @gmail.com is our email if you want to give us feedback. If you want to subscribe to us on YouTube, it's just No More Some Days. And then if you want to follow us on Instagram, we have an amazing new Instagram account we're really excited about, and we're posting every day some inspiration and things like that, stories and all kind of stuff. And it's No More Some Days with a Z over there @No More Some Days with a Z. We would love for you to follow us over there, and we just are grateful and honored to be on this journey with you guys, and we'll continue to show up and be that support system as much as we can for you all. So we hope you guys have an amazing Labor Day, and take care, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thanks for watching. Have a good week.